Really living is knowing Jesus and serving Him. And my guest today will tell you that for them, really living is taking care of God's children. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
When you embrace life's journey with a purposeful outlook and a focused perspective, when you have a passion for mission, extreme service, and abundant giving, a dedicated character with relentless strength and courage, when your spirit is at peace, that's really living.
My guests today, Doug and Daniel, work with children. Well, I mean, they're all about taking care of kids. That is what International Children's Care is all about, isn't it?
That's correct.
What does this mean?
Well, International Children's Care is an organization that started way back in 1976, Don.
Okay.
And there was a horrific earthquake in Guatemala centered there. And it killed thousands of people and left thousands of children orphaned at that point in time.
This organization was established to take care of those orphans?
Exactly. This organization was born at that time actually in the mind of Pastor Bob Falkenberg.
And what did he have in mind?
He saw the plight of the orphans in Guatemala, what had happened in their lives, and he was a missionary down there at that point in time. And so he got together 4 different medical people and was able to accumulate $40,000 from those individuals. And he contacted a lady that he knew had been part of a missionary team that had been in Guatemala, and while she was there, she loved orphan children. And he saw that. She took them into her home. Her name was Mrs. Alcian Fleck. Her husband was Pastor Kenneth Fleck. And they lived down there, and Alcian took these kids into her own home, gave them meals, took care of them whenever she could.
But this is a half dozen kids or so.
Exactly. And then so Pastor Falkenberg called her and said, we've got a terrible situation here. Would you be willing to come down and start up a program for children in Guatemala? And so Alcian asked him, well, how do you want this done? And he said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to build a big building and get a bunch of kids and get them in there so they have a place to live. And she said, then I'm not your person. And he said, well, same reaction that you've just had. What are you talking about? And she said, I believe that Jesus wants these kids to learn what it means to have a family. Because how will they ever know how to become a mother or a father or a husband and wife if they don't experience it in their own life? So she wanted to have individual family homes where you hire married couples, Christian married couples, to come in and serve as a mother and father for 10 orphaned and or abandoned children and raise them as a family unit.
10 kids to a house with 2 parents.
Basically, yes.
And one person that we call, or kids call auntie. She's also helping the house parents to take care of the kids in each house.
A mother, a father, and an auntie.
Exactly.
I see.
To create a family unit.
Well, your name isn't Mrs. Fleck. How did you get into this?
Well, that's interesting, Don. I used to be the regional sales manager for one of the largest plastics manufacturing firms in the world. 15 years ago, as I was doing this, I just felt that God could use me in some other way. I was witnessing to those around me that I worked with, many of whom didn't even understand what the word Christian might even mean. But I was doing the best I could there, but I just felt inside that there's got to be more that God can use Doug Congleton for. And so my wife and I finally decided on the day I was leaving for a sales trip to fly to Houston, Texas, we knelt down together and we prayed, God, if you want me somewhere else, like I'm feeling in my heart, you're going to need to show that to me because I don't know what it is. And the way I'm saying that I would need you to show it to me is if you would bring me a job opportunity. I've got a great job making great money, But if you bring an opportunity to me, I'm not looking for anything. So if one came, I'm going to know that's from you. So that was our prayer. But at the end, being human, and we're all selfish, I added this little verbiage at the end.
Okay.
And I said, Jesus, if it could have anything to do with kids, that would be the thrill of my life. Because my wife and I have committed our lives to helping young people. I come from a very dysfunctional home as a boy, and because of that experience, it has created a huge desire in my heart to help young people. And so we said our prayer. I added that little bit at the end. I went and got on an airplane and I flew to Houston. As I walked in my motel room, I noticed on the phone the red light was blinking. We know what that means. There's a message.
Yeah, you got to call.
Exactly. So I went to the phone, I picked up the message, and the message said, you need to call your wife right away. So I picked up the phone and I called home. My wife answered and I said, honey, what is it? And she said, you're not going to believe this. She said, but the president of International Children's Care called here an hour ago, and he said that it's really important that he speaks to you as soon as possible. And so I was taken back. And so I hung up the phone. I thought for a moment, and as I thought, my boss from the company I was working for walked in my motel room. And he said, Doug, I just want you to know, we're wanting to further you along with your territory that you're managing. And so you're going to be offered this greater role in the company. We want you to know that. This is going to happen this week while you're here. So just be aware of that. Then he left.
In other words, a promotion?
Yes. And so...
And a bigger salary?
I would imagine, but as you'll find out, I didn't stick around long enough to find that out.
Okay.
But, so I picked up the phone and I called the president of International Children's Care. And Rick Fleck is his name. Rick got on the phone and he started talking to me and he said, Doug, I need you to understand something first off. There is no way we can pay you what you make right now. We understand that. We understand this would be a sacrifice, what we're asking you to do. But I have a position here that I believe from the people that know you that I've spoken with, they have said you are the perfect person for this role. They believe God chose you for this. And so I want to offer you a position at
Doug,
International Children's Care.
You're offered a job and it's with kids.
Exactly.
You're stuck.
So Don, I'm telling you, to me, it was just as if I was speaking to God on the phone. It was a direct line because I knew this is a direct answer to my prayer. And so, yes, the company offered me what they did. I told them that I was going to go home and going to speak to my wife about a couple of situations that had arisen in my life. I went home. I have 2 sons, and they were young at that point in time. They were just finishing the 7th and 8th grade. My oldest was just getting ready to start high school. And I went and I met with my family. And Oh, exactly. I met with my family and I explained to them, I believe with all my heart that God is calling me because I asked for this. The answer has come. In a day it came. But it's here, but I need you to realize our family is going to have to sacrifice as far as the way we have lived to the way we're going to need to live in the future. And I don't know where money would come from to pay for my son, that was my oldest boy, to start Adventist school at the Adventist Academy where we live. And I said, but God is taking care of our family to this day. I have to believe he'll continue to do that. My family said, we support you totally. If you believe God wants you here, you need to be doing this. It would be wrong to not take this call. So to make a long story short, I took the call. And Don, my first day in the office of International Children's Care, my phone rang. It was the president of the organization I had just quit. He'd never spoken to me in the years I'd worked for him. I'd never knew the man, but he called me and he said, Doug, you have a customer that you used to deal with in Oregon for us that is going to drop the account. We're going to lose that business. But they said if you would call them on the phone once a week and once a month, stop by and visit and just make sure everything's okay and call us if there are problems, we will pay you $570 a month on a contract for 12 months. Now, Don, I have to tell you, at the time my son was going to go to the academy, we knew the dollar amount was $550 a month.
$550 to go to the academy.
And they just offered me $570, so there was a little gas money included.
I see.
And so he said, if you will sign this, we'll do this contract for a year. And so I told him I cannot answer this because I work for another organization now, and I want to be totally upfront with who I'm working with here. So I went downstairs, I met with Rick Fleck. He just started laughing. And he said, Doug, God is taking care of your family, just like you know, just like you've lived. God's taking care of you guys. So whatever you need to do here, feel free to do it, because God's helping your son go to school. So ever since that day, Don, God has continued to take care of Doug and his family. And I am so grateful to him to be able to serve him in a way, helping these children of ICC and taking care of my
What
family.
is your job?
I'm the executive director of International Children's Care. We call it ICC because it's not such a mouthful that way.
Right.
And so at ICC, I'm in charge of all the personnel and the things that go on in the one headquarters office that we have in Vancouver, Washington. I'm also in charge of all the construction of the project down in Mexico at our project there called El Oasis.
And how many orphanages?
We call them children's villages,
Okay.
because typically when you say the word orphanage, most people think of that giant institutional
I
building
do.
and you slap oatmeal at kids a couple times a day and
right.
bring them up and away they go. Okay, that's not what ICC does.
Okay.
As I told you, we have individual homes. We're in 15 countries today, and we have close to 1,000 children that we provide full family care to.
How many kids?
Almost 1,000.
Wow.
And truthfully, there have been thousands since ICC started in 1977 when we first opened our first home.
Yeah, how long do these kids stay with you?
There is no time limit. Don, do you put a time limit on your children and your family?
No, I guess I don't.
I don't either. ICC doesn't with our kids, because we tell our kids the day they arrive, we promise you a Christian education. We promise you that we will love you. We promise that we will help you find hope in your life and that you'll be able to have a future and you have safety here and you will have a loving family. The same thing you and I do with our own children.
Sure, sounds like home.
Exactly, and so we don't ask our kids to leave at any time. Our kids get educated. Some, after high school, they decide that I want to go out into the world now and I want to do something, and they do that. Others stay on through university, and we try to find people that would help in the funding to get them through a university education. And we have doctors, teachers, preachers, secretaries, computer people, you name it. And these kids who wouldn't have survived most of to the day that after the day they had arrived, they now have a life and they're sharing with other people about Jesus.
Daniel, how come you're here? Why are you into this?
Well, my story is a little different, definitely, but my parents were called to work at the first children's village that ICC built in Guatemala.
Your parents went.
My parents went. My father is an elder, and he was called to be the administrator of that place called Los Pinos, the Pines. We had a lot of pines in our facility there. And I was 10 years old when my family moved to that place. And from one day to the next day, my family grew to 120 kids as brothers and sisters, because we had 120 kids at Los Pinos by that time.
And these are your brothers and sisters. That's the way life was lived.
Exactly. And in the homes, as Doug was mentioning ago, we have the father, the mother figure, the auntie, and the kids, they consider brothers and sisters each other. And for me, this has been the most exciting opportunity in my life to learn from many of these kids, to consider them like my brothers and sisters. And now I still have a good relationship with some of them. Now technology is a blessing, could be a blessing. And now some kids, or adults now, are in Guatemala, in El Salvador, in Honduras, in other countries, being pastors and nurses and accountants and different, taking
Your brothers
positions.
and sisters.
My brothers and sisters. So that's how I learned about ICC when I was a kid. But I must say something that changed my life. I remember probably I was 12 years old, and some volunteers would come to the children's village to do some projects, construction, farming, different kind of projects. And I start admiring what they were doing, because I realized they were changing the life of the kids there. They were giving them a better life with everything they were doing. And I committed to God that day.
Oh, and right after the break, I want to hear what Daniel's commitment was and how that's worked out. Don't go away. We'll make sure he tells us when we come back. I'm talking today to Doug and Daniel. They're both part of ICC, which is?
International Children's Care.
And you were telling me just before the break how you got into this.
Yes.
Your parents were house mother and father.
Actually, they were the administrators of all the house mothers and fathers.
But you have 100 brothers and sisters from that first round.
Yeah. Most of the kids were younger than me, I must say. Most of the kids were between 10 to 2 years old, maybe.
I see.
But there were some older, 14, 15 years old.
Daniel, you said that volunteers came to the village.
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, after the big difference they were doing in the life of the children and everybody that was living in those children's villages, I made a commitment to God. And I promised him that I wanted to come back one day to be a servant to others, like the volunteers were for the children there. I told him, I want to help these children because I see the need they had, and I could see the blessings of receiving some help from other people.
So you made that commitment to God, not to a whole bunch of other people.
No, just to God when I was around 12 years old. I grew up there until I was 18 years old. I finished high school. There is a school, a Christian school, next door to the children's villages where all the kids from the village were sent to. When I finished there, I had the opportunity to go to Montemorelos University in Mexico to take a master's degree there.
But trouble, because while you were there, you were making believe you were studying, but you were looking across the campus.
This is true.
Yes.
And she might not want to go to a village for kids.
Well, that was probably right. And the reason was this, exactly. There is where I met my wife, in the university. We got married about a year after I finished my career. By that time, I had a little business, and we had like 7 people working for my business. And we said with my wife that we want to live in a center place, not close to her parents, not close to my parents neither. We wanted to raise our own family by our own.
Okay.
But one day, it was a Sunday morning, everything changed because I received a phone call. My parents were assigned to work in Mexico after they were in Guatemala and then in Costa Rica working for ICC. And they started working with the first kids that arrived in El Oasis Children's Village in Mexico. And my father called me that morning, and he says, I want to tell you that we need a development director for this place. And when he said that, and I thought,
You know what that meant?
well, I had an idea. But I knew what my wife and I talked before. So I thought, he's going to be losing his time talking about this because I'm not going. I mean, I am starting my own business right now. It was going well. We were very happy. We only had like 7-8 months of marriage by that time, not even a year. And I thought, maybe
what
later.
you don't need to do is move right next door to your mother.
Exactly. Not right now. But we had a conversation probably for 20, 25 minutes. And definitely God was working into me during that time. At the end of our conversation, I was totally excited.
Even about going next door to your folks.
Even about that. Because probably during that conversation, that promise that I made to God came to my mind. That I promised God that I was going to go and help the kids and do something to make their lives better.
Okay, but your wife wasn't there when you were 12 years old.
No, that's right. But you know what? Her degree in college was psychology for children.
No.
So I thought this could be interesting for her.
Whoa.
So I went back home. I told my father when we finished talking, I think this is God's call. At the beginning, I wasn't sure, but now I know this is God's call. But I'm going to ask 2 things to God. Number
You're
one,
telling this to your father.
I'm telling that to my father.
Okay.
If my wife says, her name is Fabi, if Fabi says yes, without too much trouble, you know, and I can convince her that this is God's will, and she feels the call from God, that would be answer number 1.
Okay, but another one.
There was a second one. My business, I don't want to sell the business all apart. I have customers. I have people that have contracts with them to give them services. So I want to sell the company as a company to somebody else with the people working for them and everything. So if I cannot find a buyer in 30 days, is that this is not God's plan for me. So I went back home that afternoon, and I talked to my wife. And at the beginning, she was just like me. She said, we always said we're not going to be living near your father's or my parents. So why is this?
Why even think about it?
And I started telling her, I thought the same thing at the beginning of our conversation. And I explained her everything that went through the conversation in my mind and what I felt God talking to me. And at the end, she was the same. She said, well, I don't know the place. I never grow in a place like that as you did. But I believe if this is God's call, we should go. And I was very excited. And at that moment, I told her, you know, there is a second question I asked to God. The first one was that you would accept the call. And I think you did. And I'm glad for that. The second is that we need to sell the company in less than 30 days. So let's wait for that answer. And she said, yes, let's wait for that. So we were praying for that every day. And I talked to 3 people about my plans to sell the company. In less than a week, a lady came and she says, I want to buy your company.
No.
She didn't know exactly how much I was asking for. And after that, we started talking about the price. And she said, how soon you need the money? And I said, really soon, because I need to be out of here in less than 30 days. So she gave a half
Down payment.
And then in a couple of weeks, she paid the rest. So we were ready to go. We packed our stuff. We sold some of the things. And we got to El Oasis Children's Villages in November 26, 2000.
Was it a right decision?
The best decision after marrying my wife.
And she's happy with this?
Oh, she loved the kids. And the kids love her.
Do you live right in the village?
We used to live there for 6 years. And it's so rewarding. Right now we are living in Tijuana, which is the border city near San Diego. And the reason is because my job requires me to travel constantly, do fundraising events and presentations and talk to people, pick up donations and all those things in Southern California. And for that reason, we are a little closer in Tijuana. But every time we have the chance to go to the village, it's the most exciting experience for us to see the kids growing and becoming adults.
And if you're impressed, as I feel, and you would like to give to ICC, then one way you could do it would be to go to the website, the Really Living website, look for today's program. You'll see a picture there of Doug and Daniel. You can read a little bit about it, and then you can find their website, and from that, an offering could be made.
That would be a blessing, huge blessing for our kids.
How much does it cost for a kid?
Well, we promise our children a Christian education. That has high cost, you know that.
Right.
Their food, their clothing, their home, everything involved. Over worldwide, because different countries have different economy rates and different going on. But if you take it all and you average it out, it's about $300 per child per month, which just the cost of a Christian education is more than twice that much in high school here. Okay. But with ICC, we've realized that people don't have $300 a month to just give. And so we devised long ago a program that we call the Share Sponsorship Program, where for $30 a month, you can share in that total cost of raising that child from the moment the child arrives to the moment they graduate and move on with their life. You can have that opportunity to share financially to be able to create that life for that child. And so that $30 from each individual or organization comes in until it totals the $300, and then that's it, because we won't raise more than what it costs for the child for individual kids. And
can you remember to say these same things again? Because we're going to take a real brief break, and the people who are watching are going to run and get a pencil and a paper, and they're going to write down what you're saying.
you bet.
Don't go far, just only as far as you need to go to get a pencil and a paper, and we'll be right back. Doug, you're going to tell me about what it costs and how to sponsor. But why do we want to do this? I mean, what happens to these kids?
Well, Don, the interesting thing is, as I mentioned earlier, most of the children at ICC wouldn't have survived to this day if there weren't an organization like ICC.
You mean food?
I'm talking about food, survival in life, period. Even life's existency completely would have ceased for most of our children were it not for ICC, who really are the donors and the sponsors of this world that send in to take care of them.
Oh, okay. Tell me about some child, what they look like.
Don, that's easy because these are my kids. At ICC, every one of us, Daniel knows, everyone in our office has a passion for these young people. These are amazing kids. These are kids who deserve to have a chance in life that we can provide for them. And some of our kids, I'll tell you a little story. There are miracles that happen almost every day on one of our Children's Village campuses.
Okay.
I'll tell you one particular day. It actually involved Daniel's father. When he was the administrator of the project in Mexico, I was down there, and he came and he told us, I'm going into Tijuana, I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to pick up 2 girls that they've called us for that we're going to bring back to the campus. So he said, Doug, would you get everything ready, have the kids here? We should be back about 3 o'clock. And I'm going to bring the new girls in. We'll celebrate, have a big celebration when they arrive.
Because we got 2 new girls in our family.
We have 2 new members in our family, exactly.
All right.
And we do that when kids arrive because we're excited. These are new family members for us. And so he took off. And so, you know, we were nervous and we're getting things ready because we wanted to meet our new family members. So 2:30, we're all ready. We're sitting there, you know, waiting. 3 o'clock comes, pastor doesn't show up. About 3:30, we look off in the horizon and we see the little white van coming down the road that we know he's driving.
Okay.
They pull up on the campus, and as the door opens, he steps out and he says, I'm sorry, I got there too late. They gave those 2 girls to someone else.
No.
Absolutely. And we were devastated. But I'll tell you now the first part of that story because it leads into this. I was in a Pathfinder meeting in the church in town with our kids. As I sat there, I felt water running down my arm, and I thought, it's not raining outside. Where's water leaking from? And as I looked, a little girl sitting next to me, one of our children, was crying, and the tears were falling on my arm. So I reached and I put my arm around her and I hugged her tightly, and she just broke down sobbing. And she got louder. And as it got louder, people started looking. So I picked her up in my arms and I carried her out just outside of the church. And I asked her, I said, Sarah, what is going on? What's the matter? Why are you crying? And she said, Uncle Doug, I need to tell you that I have a brother, and I don't know where he is in this world. She said, before I came to ICC, she said, we were taken from my mom. I don't even know who my dad was, but we were taken from my mother because my mother got into a fight with another person and they hit her over the head with a 2x4. And she's never been the same. There's something wrong with her mentally. And they took her away and they took us to a place and they separated us. And they brought me here. And I love it here, but I need to find my brother. Will you please help me find my brother? Mm-hmm. Don, I can tell you, you're talking about the country of Mexico. How am I going to find one boy in Mexico? How is that going to happen? And so I told her, I said, Sarah, I'm telling you, I don't know how to find your brother, but I know somebody who can, and that's Jesus. And so let's pray together to him, and let's ask him to help us. And so we did. That night, I did not sleep, Don. I was worried, trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How can I help this little girl? Okay.
Wow.
Now, we move back to the story where the pastor's gotten out of his van.
And says...
And he said, the 2 little girls, I couldn't get them. They were gone. They'd already given them away because I was too late in my arrival. So we're all discouraged and we're devastated. And then he's got a smile on his face and he said, but while I was there...
This is a dirty trick. You hooked all of us.
He said, while I was there, they brought someone else in, another child. And they said, this child, it's not working out where this child has been taken. And would you be willing to take this child into your family at El Oasis in Mexico? And he said, absolutely. So he said, just a minute. And he turned and he opened the side door of the van. And this little boy jumped out of the van. The moment he did, I heard Sarah scream, Miguel, my brother. What an amazing miracle, Don. What other way could there have been? that that child showed up there the day after this little girl prayed to Jesus to help her find him. It was an amazing miracle in my life. Wow. And I witnessed this. Daniel witnesses these kinds of stories every day at ICC, where you realize Jesus loves these kids so much that he answers their prayer. And that's why for us it's a privilege and it's an honor in this life to really live by helping other people and serving God in this amazing way.
Are there other stories like this, or did he pick the one out of the thousands of kids?
Well, there's thousands of stories, definitely. I will share a story with you of one of our kids that for us is so special. All our kids are special.
Absolutely.
But we have some kids that are a little more special sometimes because you spend a little more time with them, because they want to be with you all the time. They want to learn from you. And this is a boy. When we were living at El Oasis, actually is when my daughter born, and she started walking in that facility, in that house. And so probably you remember the first steps your kids
Sure.
start walking. Well, it was exciting for me to see her walk. It was exciting to see her trying to go straight and going to one side or the other. So one kid, while we were out there trying to help my daughter to walk, one kid approached me and he says, "Are you excited to see your daughter walking?" He says, "Sure, it's exciting to see her. I mean, it's wonderful." And he said to me with sad eyes, "My grandmother told me when I start walking, my father didn't care.
No.
My father was there and he just left. They told her, hey, he started giving her his first steps, and he didn't care. He just left. And right after that, he left my mother." It was so hard because you are excited for your child that is doing this, but you see the suffering that some of these things can cause in other kids because of their life. So I put my arm around him and I told him, "I don't know what your father did this to you, because this is exciting. This should be exciting for any father and mother to see this in their kids. But I know there is a father that was watching you when you were giving your first steps. And this is our Heavenly Father. And He is with us, and He'll be with you all your life if you want to let Him be part of your life."
Wow.
He is right now still with us. He is in high school. He's a kid, active kid, like any other kid.
They all are.
Very active. We have good relationship. We love them and they love us, and they know God loves them, which is the most important thing.
Special. I didn't get in this about how to give and how much and all of those things, but we'll come back. This time I want to make sure we get it in so that you can sponsor a child if you wish. So don't go away. You already have the paper and the pen. Stay right there with us. We'll be right back. These kids are not making money, they're costing money. How do you do this?
Well, this is a totally faith-driven ministry, obviously, as you've heard us talk, and it is totally funded by private individuals or organizations that give. It can be a general donation that's sent in, or as we referred to earlier, the sponsorship program, where for $30 a month, either an individual, a group of people, a Sabbath school class, a church, an organization or club, for $30 a month, they can sponsor one of these children to keep them alive, to give them hope for their futures. And even with churches, Don, we have a program we've devised called One Church, One Child, or OCOC. is what we refer to it as. And I'm going to give you an example of it.
Okay.
Last Sabbath, I was in an Adventist church up in Washington State. My wife and I decided to visit this little church. I can't tell you there were more than 35 to 40 members there of the whole church. And as we sat there, the person up front said, okay, we're now going to pick up the offering. It's going to go to the worldwide church and all of that. The offering plate came by. And then shortly after the offering plate, this little wicker basket started filtering down the aisle, and it came to me, and I took it, and it was full of coins. And I looked in there and I thought, what is this about? And obviously, the look on my face let the lady behind me realize that he doesn't know what this is. So she leaned forward and she said, this is our orphan offering. Well, instantly, my wife and I, our faces lit up.
Sure.
Because we love these kids. And so we don't know who these kids are they're helping, but we're going to help too. So we put our offering, we passed it along. So after the service, we went to the potluck. And at the potluck, I'm standing in line, and there were several people there, and I turned and I said, hey, I'm a guest today, and I'm interested. They passed along this little basket, said it was for orphan offering. What is that about? And those people were excited, and they said, oh man, this is wonderful. We've been doing this for years. We sponsor 2 children through International Children's Care.
No.
Absolutely. And they said every week we pass the basket and people just put in their change. And when at the end of the month, we always have more in the basket than is required to pay the $30 a month for each child. And we have more, so we send it to ICC and say, just use it for other kids who don't have wherever it's best needed. And Don, that was exciting to me because I looked in the basket again. There was just change, small change that people were dropping. Pennies per person per week go in the basket, and they accumulated enough to save the life of a child and to change their life for them. And so for me, small change equals big change. That's an amazing thing. That's another miracle.
Where do you get these kids?
These kids come to us, Don. Sometimes the police bring them to the campus. Sometimes a mom that's sick and she's dying, we've had them stop by and ask us to please take my children and raise them. We've had Children's Services Department in the countries contact us, bring us children. They come from all different avenues. And I can tell you, there is not one good story in their life of how they came to be there. But because of people who donate and sponsor to this organization for these kids, they can have a wonderful ending because they have an opportunity to be saved twice, the way I term it. The first saving is from the street where they're dying. They have a chance to come, have 3 meals a day, live in a home, have a family, learn to be loved. But the second saving, to me, is the greatest because they have the opportunity to learn about the gift of salvation through Jesus Christ, to be saved in His kingdom. That's what's the harvest of all of this for all of us.
What's your youngest kid?
Probably months old. We get children as babies. Sometimes we get teenagers. It changes, it varies all the time.
And your job, love these kids and send them in a new direction.
Absolutely. The greatest is love.
Now, is school a part of this village?
Absolutely. Our kids go to Christian Adventist school. We promise them a minimum of a high school education in our schools, and then we will help you find some way through your sponsors, through donors, whoever, find some way to get a scholarship to be able to go on to university. We contact our universities in the countries we're in. We try to get reduced prices to be able to help our kids be able to have a life where they can now go out and make a difference. And Don, the sponsors have told me, people who sponsor today say, my $30, Doug, is not much. I realize it doesn't do much, but it's what I can give. And I tell them, wait a minute, you don't understand. Because let me tell you something. That $30 goes to take care of a child. Their life is saved. They grow up. They get an education. They learn about Jesus Christ and His gift of salvation. When they grow up, now they're out in the workplace, in the world. They're sharing Jesus with others. Others are learning of God from these kids. Now, Don, tell me, how much is your $30 per month worth?
It's a small price to make a big difference, isn't it?
It is. It's an amazing.
Many of them, they're giving back even to the children's villages where the first kid that was taken by ICC in Guatemala is now a doctor.
Yes.
And he lives very close to the Los Pinos village in Guatemala. And he helps with our children.
He's provided free medical care to our kids. The kids that grow up, what Daniel's saying is they want to give back. They're so grateful for what they've received. They know they received life and now the opportunity for a future life with God, and they want to give back, and that's what they do.
So this physician, who was at one time one of these
Our very
orphans,
first boy ever,
is now saying, I'll take care of you medically free, plus here's some money.
Yeah, he does that too, whatever he can do. Exactly.
In Mexico, since Mexico is a project that started in 1997, we have just recently the joy of having our first kid graduating from university, our very first kid. And just last week, she got her job, first job. She was so excited. And I shared with the kids of the village, hey, she just got a job now.
Your sister has a job.
Exactly. And they were all excited. How much is she gonna make? That was the first question. When is she coming back? And it's so important for kids to see successful stories because they now have a meaning in life. They see, I can do it too. I have people that wants to help me. And now it's up to me to take the good decisions and get a good career in college.
Do these kids ever write to a sponsor?
Constantly.
Always. Sponsors can write back and forth with their children. Children are going to send them pictures. They don't have money to buy you cards for Christmas and Father's Day and Mother's Day. And so what they do is they create their own card. They color it for you, they mail it. Because they love you. They know you love them. Don, one day I was asked to come into a little girl's room and she said, Uncle Doug, I want to show you something that's so special. She opened a box and she pulled out this card that obviously had been handled, I couldn't tell you how many thousands of times. And she gave me this card and she said, can you believe that someone would love me so much they would buy me this expensive gift and send it to me? It was a card. And it just amazed me that these kids have the understanding that they are loved so much by the sponsors and donors. And they tell us, they tell Daniel and I both, please tell my sponsor, thank you. Thank you for taking care of us and thank you for saving my life.
Don't go away, just about time you have your eyes watered and or dried up from the watering. We'll be right back. We'll be here to tell you about giving to ICC. In our final minutes, do you want to tell me something?
Well, I would like to invite the audience of this program to experience the really living of giving the life to other children and helping them to be a better people for this world and for heaven.
And Doug?
Absolutely, Don. I just want you to know that I love these kids with all of my heart. And my prayer and my hope today is that you and your viewers will love them too.
And I think about what you told me off camera about this little kid giving you a chance to hold her best present she's ever received in her life, which is a used card.
Exactly. But it's so special to her because it represents love in her life.
Somebody said, I love you with that card.
Exactly.
And sent it to her.
Exactly.
Can a sponsor come and visit?
Absolutely. We encourage any sponsor to come and visit your sponsored child. My wife and I sponsor kids as well, and we know of the tremendous blessing it is in our life. God has poured blessings into our lives through this, and we get far more out than we've ever given, and we're just so thankful and honored to have the opportunity to work with these kids in the way that we're able to.
Would you like to make a difference in the life of a child? Well, in the Successories bookstores, you can buy a picture, and underneath it, it'll tell you 100 years from now, it won't much matter about your bank account, but the world might be a better place because of your friendship with the child.
Amen.
Right now, you have the chance to make a difference in a child's life by sponsoring them, your church, or you personally. Feed them, give them clothes, give them an education. The ICC group has 1,000 or so kids at all times, and you can feed them. You can educate them. Well, if you want to be really living today, ask Jesus what he would like for you to do. He has given me so much, and today I told him, I want to be yours.
Amen.
I want to serve you.
Amen.
Doug and Daniel have today given themselves to Jesus. As you say, Jesus, I want you to be in charge of my life, he'll come into your life. And as he comes in, you will be really living.
If you've enjoyed today's topic on Really Living and would like more information, please visit us online at reallyliving.tv. On our site, you can also obtain directions for ordering DVDs of today's program, access updated schedule information, or submit story ideas. We look forward to your visit at www.reallyliving.tv.